While being in the wrong spot can lead to problems, I hadn't planned on running into trouble. As I sat at a red light, a guy pulled up next to me and motioned for me to lower my window. "You've got a flat tire," he said. I thanked him and turned into the Walmart parking lot to check it out. Sure enough, there was a screw embedded in the tire, and air was slowly leaking out. What now? I figured I'd go inside and grab a can of that slime stuff. When I came back, I made the mistake of removing the screw. Air started escaping even faster. I quickly screwed it back in and headed to a nearby gas station to fill the tire. I was about 15 miles from home and figured I could make it, checking the tire along the way. If it got too low, I'd use the slime. About 5 miles from home, I noticed in my side mirror that the tire was really low. I pulled into a convenience store, but they didn't have an air pump. It was time to try the slime. I poured it in, and green goo oozed out. Guess that's why they call it slime, but at least the air stopped leaking. Just as I was getting ready to get back in the car, I saw a huge pickup truck pull in, one of those massive ones with giant tires. I remembered seeing that truck before. The door opened, and a tall guy with blonde hair stepped out, dressed in cowboy boots and a big belt buckle. I chuckled to myself until I saw who got out of the passenger side. It was Rachel, my wife of 18 years. I froze. They didn't notice me parked nearby, probably because I was in a nondescript company car, one of those small imports. They walked hand in hand into the store, Rachel giggling at something he said. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I couldn't breathe or move. Then it hit me where I'd seen the guy before. He worked with Rachel. She managed an office at a mental health clinic, and he was one of the caseworkers there. His name finally came to me, Jerry Garner. But what was Rachel doing with him, and why wasn't she at work? Determined to find out, I waited in my car. When they came out, he helped her into the truck, and they drove off. I followed at a distance. They ended up at our house, and he parked in the garage. The door closed behind them, cutting off my view. I waited for half an hour, but my anxiety about the tire kept me checking it constantly. I couldn't tell if it was losing air, but I didn't want to chance it. 2 hours later, the garage door opened, and they drove past me. I hid my face with a file folder. Though they were so wrapped up in each other, they wouldn't have noticed me anyway. Rachel wasn't supposed to finish work until 5, and it was only 2:30. I had time, so I decided to go inside the house. I still had to pick up Toby, my 15-year-old daughter, at 4, but I didn't know what I'd find or what I'd even say to her. Inside, everything was quiet. The only sound was the drip from the faucet in Toby's bathroom, reminding me of a repair I needed to do. Aside from that, the house seemed normal. Upstairs, the bed was made with fresh sheets, and my heart sank. I slid down the wall, feeling numb. There was only one conclusion that made sense, but I couldn't fully process it. I sat there for what felt like half an hour, my mind racing in circles. I felt sick, my stomach in knots. I grabbed a Sprite to calm it down and splashed cold water on my face in the bathroom. As I dried off, I noticed the shower floor was still wet. They had showered before leaving. Stunned, I stumbled back to the bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, the same bed my wife had just shared with someone else. The realization hit me hard, and I recoiled in horror. Divorce was inevitable, but beyond that, I had no idea what to do next. I didn't know any lawyers, had no clue about the legal process, and still had to pick up Toby from school. What would I tell her? Dragging myself to the car, I felt like I'd been through the ringer. My head pounded, and I wasn't in any shape to drive, but I couldn't leave Toby waiting. As I pulled up to the school, I spotted her by the doors. She walked toward me, her beauty tugging at my heart. Toby had inherited her mother's dark complexion and hair, but her eyes were unique, deep brown with golden green flecks. After tossing her bag in the back, she hopped in and leaned in for a kiss, but stopped, sensing something was wrong. "Dad, what's up? Are you okay? Did something happen to Mom?" "I'm fine, Kitten," I reassured her, though I wasn't sure if I was convincing myself or her. "No one's hurt, but we need to talk. Let's go to the park and I'll explain everything." She looked worried but nodded. "Sure, Dad, but you're scaring me." "I know, but trust me, it'll be okay," I said, hoping my words weren't just empty comfort. We reached the park in no time, and memories flooded back, me pushing her on the swings, Rachel and I sitting together on the bench. Would all I have left now be memories of better days? We strolled hand in hand to a bench, and I struggled to find the right words. "Just tell me, Dad," she urged. "I can handle it." I'm not sure I admitted, but once I started, everything poured out. I told her everything. Through my tears, she held my hand, offering comfort. When I finished, she leaned into me. "That sounds rough, Dad," she said softly. "But we need to talk to Mom. There's still a lot we don't know." I kissed her on the head, feeling proud. My kid was stronger than I was. She tugged my hand, ready to go. "Want to drive?" I asked, and her eyes lit up. She had just received her learner's permit. A fleeting expression of uncertainty crossed her face, but it quickly disappeared. She drove home cautiously, noting that Rachel's car was parked in the garage. It was time to face reality. Rachel greeted us at the door with hugs and kisses, acting as though she hadn't done anything wrong. Either she was putting on the best show of her life, or I had completely misread the situation. "How about takeout tonight?" she offered. "My treat." Toby stepped forward. "Mom, we need to talk." "Of course, is everything all right?" Rachel asked, concern flickering across her face. "I'm not sure," Toby replied. We moved inside, and I took a seat next to Toby on the couch, leaving Rachel to settle into her usual, yet unattractive, favorite chair. "What's going on?" she asked, still showing no sign of worry. "How was your day?" I asked. She gave me a puzzled glance. "Just the usual," she said. "I had lunch courtesy of a rep from the Onion Bin. Work was as chaotic as ever." "Why do you ask?" "So you were at the office all day?" Toby probed. "Yes, of course," she confirmed. "Why all the questions? What's going on?" "You weren't with Jerry Garner at the house this afternoon?" I inquired. Her face drained of color. "No way," she protested. "Are you accusing me, Oliver?" "I saw you," I insisted. "You didn't see anything," she began to stutter. "What are you trying to get at?" "He's not lying," Mum, Toby interrupted. "I believe him." "You think I'm lying?" she asked, her voice shaking. "Call Angel, she'll confirm I was at work." "I won't ask Angel," Toby replied firmly. "She'd cover for you. I'll call your boss, David Jones. He won't lie for you. What's his number?" "He's already left for the day," Rachel answered quickly. "I'll have him call you tomorrow. What's going on with you two? Are you trying to trap me? What are you accusing me of?" She appeared to think that launching a strong attack would be her best defense. "I think you've been caught in your own lie," I told her. "All three of us know the truth. Why did you do it?" Rachel paused, thinking. "Okay, I was here," she admitted. "But that's why I didn't want to say anything. I knew you'd grill me and accuse me of things." "No one's accusing you of anything," Toby clarified. "But now, you've made it worse. You've tried to make Dad look like the liar to cover your tracks." "What are you hiding, Mom? Are you having an affair with that guy?" "You don't even know him," Rachel said, her voice faltering. "I've met him twice," Toby shot back. "He creeps me out, but that's not the point." "Are you cheating with him?" Rachel's eyes darted between us, clearly feeling cornered. I didn't want it to come to this, she finally confessed. I wasn't ready. Ready for what Toby pressed. "I've fallen for Jerry," she admitted, her voice breaking. She turned to me. "I'm sorry, Oliver. I didn't plan for this to happen. It just did. We connected. It felt like he was my other half. I couldn't stop it. We're in love." She continued. "I was going to tell you when the time was right. Once we both got divorced, we were planning to get married. I'm so sorry you had to find out like this. Toby, everything will be fine. You'll still see your dad, and Jerry has a lovely place by the lake. He likes you. And he has a daughter your age." "Are you out of your mind?" Toby nearly yelled. "I'm not living with that guy. I'll stay with Dad because I'm moving in with him. You, on the other hand, I won't be seeing." She stormed upstairs, slamming her bedroom door behind her. Rachel turned to me, looking desperate. "She'll calm down," she said, almost pleading. "Jerry is a good man, Oliver. You'll see. He makes me happy, and I deserve to be happy." I stared at her, hardly recognizing the person in front of me. "When are you leaving?" I asked. "Leaving?" she echoed, shocked. "I'm not leaving. Where would I go? Jerry is still married. We need to tell his wife first and figure out the divorce settlements." "No, you're leaving," I insisted. "You've got 3 days." Her mouth fell open. "You can't kick me out of my own house," she exclaimed. "If anyone should leave, it's you." "You're forgetting something," I said. This is my house, I owned it before we got married. It's in my name, not yours. So no, you're the one who's leaving. And where am I supposed to go, she asked, her voice trembling. Are you just tossing me aside? I don't care, I replied coldly. Maybe a motel, one of those places you rent by the hour. You know, where cheaters go. Tears welled up in her eyes. That's really cruel, Oliver, she whispered. I didn't plan for this. Jerry and I just clicked. I didn't want to hurt you. Oh, so it's accidental then, I snapped. Like tripping and poking your own eye out with a stick. Yeah, I get it now. There's no need for sarcasm, she muttered. Why can't you accept that Jerry and I are in love? Oh, I don't know, Rachel, I said, dripping with sarcasm. Maybe because this morning you said you loved me, and now you're saying you love him. I do still love you, she insisted. I'll always love you. But I'm in love with Jerry now. Well, that clears things up, I replied. You've been telling me for 18 years that you loved me, but I guess I was wrong. No, we were in love, she said, reaching for my hand, but I pulled away. You have 3 days, I repeated coldly. If you're not gone by then, I'll have the sheriff remove you. Please, Oliver, she begged, her voice shaking. We can still be friends. Jerry wants to be friends too. We have Toby to think about. I don't want to lose you. I stared at her, my sadness turning into anger. You must be out of your mind, I said. Friends? With you? With him? Never. Tell Jerry that if he ever comes near me, it'll be a short conversation. As for you, you're my enemy now. 3 days and I don't ever want to see you again. I'll contact a lawyer tomorrow to get the divorce started. I headed to the bedroom, leaving her behind as she continued making noise, which to me was just background chatter. She followed me, still going on about being friends, as I moved her things to the spare room. There were more clothes than I could carry, so I simply piled them on her and took an armful to the spare room to hang in the closet. She lingered, trailing behind me, talking and watching as I moved. When she started hanging the clothes, I seized the moment to slip away and lock the bedroom door. I heard her try the doorknob from the hallway before walking away. After a few minutes, Toby texted me, "You doing okay, Dad?" "Yeah, kitten you," I replied. "Not yet, but I will be," she responded. "All right, love you," I texted back. "Let me know if you need anything. Can you take me to school tomorrow?" "I don't want to ride with her," she asked. Of course, I got into bed, lying there for hours, trying to figure out what to do next. I must have dozed off around 3, only to be woken by my phone alarm. I got up, took a shower, and called my boss. I explained I was going through a divorce and needed a few days off. He was sympathetic, telling me to take as much time as I needed. After that, I made some coffee, had a couple of cups, and cooked breakfast for Toby and me. She came downstairs on time, looking as beautiful as ever, and devoured her meal. Eventually, Rachel joined us, grabbed a cup of coffee, and attempted to start a conversation, but we ignored her. It was time to take Toby to school. Rachel asked if she was ready, but Toby turned to me instead, asking, "You ready, Dad?" I jingled the keys, and she grabbed her backpack. "You two are acting like toddlers," Rachel remarked as she stormed off, purse in hand, giving us one last glare before leaving. I dropped Toby off at school, and she kissed me before heading inside. I sat in the car, watching her disappear into the building, and my thoughts drifted to my friend Dan, who had recently gone through a divorce. I decided to call him and ask about his attorney. Dan didn't recommend his lawyer but suggested I contact his wife's instead. He gave me her name, and I found the number. When I called, a woman answered and scheduled an appointment for later that afternoon. In the meantime, I took steps to protect our finances by lowering the credit card limits to $1,500. It would inconvenience me too, but I wasn't about to fund Rachel's affair. My meeting with Elizabeth Baxter started off rocky. She assumed I was leaving Rachel for someone else. "You've got it wrong," I corrected her. "Rachel's been cheating on me with a married co-worker, and they're planning to divorce their spouses to be together." "I'm sorry," she said. "I can't represent anyone involved in that situation. It goes against my principles, I understand," I replied. "We have a daughter, and I want to protect her from the fallout. Is there any chance I could get custody?" "It's possible," she acknowledged. "In theory, either parent can get custody, but in practice, fathers, especially those with daughters, rarely win custody." "How old is she, and does she want to live with you?" "She's 15, and yes, she wants to stay with me," I said. "That matters in court," she assured me. "In our state, children over 14 can choose, and even younger kids' preferences are considered. Given her age and her desire to stay with you, you have a good chance. Driving home, I thought about my next steps. I had to be cautious. Any wrong move could jeopardize my chances of getting custody of Toby, and I wasn't willing to take that risk. I suspected Jerry's wife had no idea about the affair, just like I hadn't. So the first thing I decided to do was tell her. I began making a list to plan my approach. Informing Rachel's family was high on the list since her parents had always been fond of me and they adored Toby. But I wasn't sure how to break the news. I also prioritized letting all our friends know and planned to stir up some attention on social media. Rachel had a Facebook account for our family, and I was familiar with it. After some digging online, I discovered that Jerry's wife had a similar social media presence. I took screenshots of a few pictures and posted on Rachel's page, announcing that we were splitting up because she had found her soulmate in Jerry, along with his photo. Then, I changed the password and logged out. It felt satisfying. I wondered how long it would take for her friends and family to bombard her with calls and messages. I hoped Jerry's wife would get the hint. I didn't know her and felt a bit guilty about the chaos she'd soon face, but I believed she deserved to know the truth. I called my mum, and the conversation went as expected. She was shocked, but after the initial surprise, she assured me she'd tell Dad and that they supported me no matter what. I decided to leave it to Rachel to inform her parents. I had always had a good relationship with them and didn't want to cause any unnecessary family conflict. Plus, I didn't know how to start that conversation. Telling them their daughter was cheating wasn't exactly easy. They might end up blaming me instead. Things escalated quickly by 2 p.m. Rachel's name flashed on my phone screen. When I answered, she was furious. "You jerk," were the first words out of her mouth, and strangely, they gave me a sense of satisfaction. "You just couldn't leave it alone, could you? I know you locked me out of Facebook. Take that stuff down. Jerry's wife is clueless, and my friends won't stop calling. Even my parents know. Take it down now," she demanded. "Nope, you don't get to make the rules anymore," I shot back. "What are you, 5? Take it down, Oliver?" "I'm serious, why should I challenged. "You should be happy. Now everyone can start getting used to you and your soulmate." "Are you embarrassed about people finding out you cheated, Rachel?" "Because I'm not." She stopped, realizing how absurd her words sounded. "Oliver, please, just take it down. This isn't how it was supposed to go." "You lost the right to decide how things go the moment you cheated," I reminded her. "You gave up any right to my respect or even basic kindness. I've made it clear you're the enemy now, Rachel. Deal with it." I hung up. My phone buzzed again immediately, but I ignored it. It was time to pick up Toby. On the way, I filled Toby in about my conversation with Elizabeth Baxter. She was relieved that she'd likely stay with me, but she wasn't entirely happy. "What's up with her, Dad?" she asked. "I care about her, but she's always been kind of off. She never felt like a grown-up, not like you. It's like you've got 2 kids, her and me." "Have you ever noticed that?" "Not exactly like that," I replied. "But now that you mention it, she's always been impulsive." "I just never expected this." "Well," Toby said, "we'll just have to deal with it however we can. But Dad, I never want to be alone in the house with that creep without you there. Whatever it takes, make sure that doesn't happen, okay?" "I'll do everything I can," I promised. We grabbed pizza on the way home. I was enjoying my second slice when my phone buzzed. It was Bob, Rachel's dad. I wasn't looking forward to this conversation. I told Toby who it was, and she suggested I put it on speaker. Bob got straight to the point. "Oliver, I'm not sure what's going on, but Rachel showed up last night, asking to stay with us." "Care to explain?" "Did you ask her why?" I replied. "She said you kicked her out." "I did, but did she tell you why?" I retorted. "No. She said she'd explain later," he answered. "Do you want to hear her side first?" I asked. "Can't you just tell me?" he pressed. "Sure," I said. "She's been having an affair with Jerry Garner, a co-worker. They're planning to divorce their spouses and be together." "What? That's unbelievable, Oliver. How do you know?" he questioned. "I caught them together yesterday, and she admitted it," I stated. "Are you sure there's no misunderstanding?" he persisted. Toby chimed in. "Hi, Grandpa. I've been listening. Dad has you on speaker. There's no misunderstanding. I was there when she told him." "I'm sorry, Grandpa. I love you." Her voice cracked, and Bob's tone softened. "Don't cry, sweetheart. Stay strong, okay? Grandma and I love you so much." "I'll try, Grandpa," she replied. Bob turned back to me, his voice strained. "Oliver, are you still there?" "Yeah, I'm here, Bob. Don't worry about Toby. You and your wife will always be her grandparents, and that won't change. I know you care about Rachel, and you'll do what you have to." I respect that, and I hope this won't cause any hard feelings. That's not going to happen, he assured me. I'll get to the bottom of this. Call me if you need anything. The conversation went better than I expected. Life throws challenges at you, and all you can do is your best to manage them. I won't get into the messy details of the divorce. Most people know how it goes. It was long, painful, and didn't get easier. Rachel had unrealistic expectations. She thought she'd get custody of Toby, but that didn't happen. Elizabeth Baxter was as capable as they come, and thanks to Toby's preference to stay with me, I was granted full custody. After a private meeting with Toby, the judge ruled Rachel would have visitation rights, but no unsupervised time with either Toby or Jerry Garner. However, that soon became irrelevant. Jerry's wife divorced him, and their soulmate connection dissolved. Just 2 weeks after I discovered their affair, Jerry was off chasing someone else, and all their big plans evaporated. The divorce took 7 months to finalize. During our second court appearance, Rachel surprised me by requesting counseling. Neither I nor Miss Baxter could talk her out of it, and the judge ordered us to attend 8 to 10 sessions. We ended up with this eccentric old hippie guy. In the first session, we were asked to outline our goals. Rachel's was a long, confusing mess. She seemed to think the universe revolved around her happiness and that she didn't mean to hurt anyone, just wanted to be happy. My goal was much simpler. "What's your aim for these sessions, Mr. Buren?" he asked me. "I just want them to be over," I replied. Our guide frowned. "Mr. Buren, don't you want to address the issues that led to the end of your marriage?" "No, Mr. Rodman," I responded. "Those issues weren't mine, and I have no interest in addressing them. I'm at peace with who I am, flaws and all." Both Rachel and the counselor looked shocked by my response. Rachel immediately jumped in. "Oliver, how can we move forward if you won't even talk about this? We're not going back," I said firmly. "Let me be clear, I don't care about fixing things or going back to how they were. I'm only here because the court ordered it. Once that's done, we'll finalize our divorce. That's my plan, do you realize?" The counselor warned, "If I tell the judge you're not cooperating, you could be held in contempt." "I wasn't aware of that," I said. "Are you suggesting you'd lie to the judge? These sessions are recorded. My lawyer could subpoena them and prove your dishonesty. I'm here doing what you asked. You asked for my goals, and I told you. So I am cooperating." He looked embarrassed. "The judge probably expects you to try to resolve your issues," he remarked. "I'm not responsible for the judge's expectations," I clarified. "I'm only responsible for mine." He made things difficult by giving me homework, which involved spending time with Rachel. She tried hard to wear me down. "What's it going to take for you to call off the divorce and work things out?" she asked. "An act of God," I replied. She waited for me to explain, but I remained silent. "What do you mean by an act of God?" she pressed. "Unless you can turn back time and undo your affair with Jerry, nothing will change," I explained. "I haven't heard of anyone but God who can do that. Have you developed any hidden powers, Rachel, other than the ability to attract men with your charm?" We endured the tedious sessions and pointless conversations until they were finally over. We went back to court, and the judge asked if there had been any progress. "Your Honor, my client has no desire to remain married," Elizabeth Baxter declared. "We're requesting a swift conclusion to this divorce. Both my client and his daughter have endured this long enough." The judge must have agreed, as the divorce decree arrived by mail just 10 days later. Toby spent plenty of time with her mother, particularly because she liked visiting her grandparents. Rachel occasionally made plans with Toby, but their bond wasn't the same. Toby mostly hung out with her friends, especially Sabrina, who practically lived with us. Sabrina was sweet and easygoing, and I enjoyed having her around. They started inviting me to join their activities, one of which was water skiing. Since we had a boat, we often spent our Saturdays at nearby lakes during the summer break. One Monday they asked if we could take the RV to the lake for the weekend. Since I didn't have many plans, I thought it was a great idea. Toby and Sabrina spent the week preparing, and by Thursday we had everything packed. On Friday afternoon, a red Jeep Cherokee pulled into the driveway and Sabrina got out. Another woman, who looked almost exactly like her, stepped out of the driver's seat, and Toby rushed over to hug her. "Dad, this is Julie, Sabrina's mom. I know you haven't met her yet," Toby introduced. Julie extended her hand. "Hey, Oliver, I've heard a lot about you from the girls. Thanks for including me this weekend. Honestly, I've been a little jealous they spend so much time with you instead of me," she said with a playful grin. In that moment, I understood why Sabrina was so charming. I glanced at Toby, and she gave me a determined look. My knees wobbled, and I knew I had to give in. The wobbling got worse when I looked at Sabrina, who raised an eyebrow. "It's going to be fun," I said to Julie, regaining my voice. "We always have a blast." Julie caught on quickly. She looked between me and the girls and then back at me. "Oh my God," she exclaimed. "You didn't know, did you?" Before she could say more, the girls hugged her and begged, "Please, Mum, don't worry. We're going to have a great time." Sabrina reassured her. "It's fine, Mum. Dad will like you as much as I do, and he's awesome," Toby added. "See how he's going along with it." Julie unraveled herself from their arms, glanced at the girls, and told them, "You two, go sit on the porch. I need to talk to Oliver." They hesitated, but she insisted now. They hurried off. "I'm really sorry, Oliver. I had no idea." Julie apologized. "I'm taking Sabrina home, and she's grounded for a month. This is so embarrassing." She looked small and awkward, so I stepped forward and hugged her. At first she stiffened, but then relaxed. "Yeah, it's embarrassing," I agreed. "They're naughty but harmless." "Let me guess you're not married," she chuckled, glancing up at me. "Nope, I'm not. You think that's what this is about?" "I'm pretty sure," I replied. "Here's the deal, everything's set for the weekend. The lake's going to be great. I'm not a bad guy, and you've seen that with Toby. Let's just go with it. It'll be fun, and who knows, we might surprise the girls. What do you say?" Julie looked at the girls waiting eagerly on the porch, then back at me and smiled. "Yeah, let's do it." I gave the girls a thumbs up and they jumped to their feet, excitedly rushing over. I heard Toby's enthusiastic yes as she came out. I stopped them, putting an arm around each. "Ladies, that wasn't cool," I said. Sabrina looked up and laughed, doing her best Skeletor impression. "I am not nice." We all burst into laughter, and I couldn't stay serious. "You know what you're doing," I scolded them lightly. "Stop meddling in people's lives." "But I love Julie, and I wanted you to meet her," Toby said, defending herself. "Well, you could have just told me," I reasoned. She looked a bit disappointed. "It's okay, kitten. Just don't pull this again," I reassured her. Her face lit up. Sabrina tugged at my arm. "Come on, let's go. This is going to be awesome." "Oliver, just wait," Julie laughed. "I think she means it's going to be really fun, Oliver." She was right. "We're wasting daylight," she added. We grabbed a couple of bags from her Jeep, hitched up the boat, and after a quick propane stop, hit the road. It took us about half an hour to reach the lake, with Julie sitting up front beside me. The girls blasted terrible music through their Bluetooth as we got to know each other. Julie turned out to own her own insurance company and handled financial planning too. I kept sneaking glances at her during the conversation. She was cute. Sabrina would definitely grow up to look like her, despite looking younger than her age. Julie was only 3 years younger than me. She stood about 5'8", had light blonde hair flowing down to her lower back and a healthy tan. Her big brown eyes, high cheekbones and heart-shaped face gave her a flawless look. She wore jeans and a button-up shirt that showed off her slim figure. I didn't want to stare, so I waited until we arrived at the lake to take a proper look. We found a perfect spot to park the boat and RV. The girls kicked me out while they changed, and I took care of setting up the water connection. Once they were ready, I changed into my swim trunks and a t-shirt, and we were good to go. With a cooler full of drinks, we headed out of the no-wake zone. I sped up, and we cruised a few miles down the lake. The girls couldn't wait to ski. They shed their long t-shirts, revealing their usual clumsy charm, but Julie was something else entirely. She wasn't awkward in the slightest. I had mentioned she was slender, but she was incredibly petite. Her figure was feminine, and when she turned to watch the girls, I couldn't look away. Her bikini wasn't flashy, but it was barely managing to cover her impressively toned, round rear end. When she caught me staring, she just smiled. She had small breasts, but they suited her perfectly. Everything about her was like a tiny version of perfection. "All done?" she asked, her smile softening the moment. Her teeth were flawless too. I chuckled. "For now. You know how you look, Julie. I'm just a guy." She moved closer, finding a spot to sit and chat while keeping an eye on the girls. We spent 3 hours water skiing, and Julie was quite skilled. When it was my turn, she took the wheel of the boat, and she handled it just as well. I wasn't as skilled as Julie, or the girls' physics wasn't in my favor, but I managed well enough. After we got back to the campsite, the girls put on wraps. Although the RV had a perfectly good stove, they insisted on cooking outside. We set up the camp stove, and I started a fire on the grill at the campsite. While I grilled bratwursts, they chopped and fried potatoes and onions and opened cans of pork and beans. We had prepped some meals at home, but it was our first night, and there's nothing like campfire cooking. We ate at the picnic table the campground provided, and it felt like we had known each other forever. Julie quickly became Jules, as the girls called her, and she embraced the nickname. She started calling me Ollie. The girls kept mentioning how Jules wasn't married, so I finally asked, "Why not? You're beautiful, funny, smart, and you run your own business. Why hasn't someone swept you off your feet?" She paused for a moment before answering. "Well, the main reason is Sabrina," she eventually said. "I was young and naive, Ollie. I found out I was pregnant just a week before my college graduation. Back then, I thought I was with the love of my life. We had plans to marry right after graduation." "I guess that didn't work out, seeing as you're talking about it in the past," I remarked. "No, it didn't. 3 days after I told Brad I was pregnant, I found out he'd been cheating on me for a month. I ended it with him and never looked back. Once Sabrina was born, I was completely focused on being a mom. Then I got busy building my business. By the time I was ready to think about dating again, I realized I had an incredible gift in Sabrina, and I couldn't make any decisions without her in mind." "I get that," I said. "I feel the same about Toby. As long as I have her, she's my priority. She's the one who kept me grounded over the last 18 months. Julie placed her small hand on my arm. "I know," she said softly. "She shares everything with Sabrina and me. I'm so sorry, Ollie. Yeah, life can be tough sometimes," I agreed. When we glanced up, we saw 2 sets of affectionate eyes watching us. They were having a quiet conversation, sitting in their camp chairs under the awning. "I love your daughter," I confessed. "She feels like a part of me. With all the time she spends with us, she loves you too," Julie replied. "The other day she told me you're like the father she never had." Her eyes welled up, and a tear slid down her cheek. I gently wiped it away. "She's an amazing girl," I said. "Her mum must be pretty special to have raised her." Julie smiled through her tears, kissed my cheek, and went to join the girls. We had an incredible weekend. As Julie was about to leave, I tapped on her car window. "Jules, would you like to go out with me next Friday?" I asked. Sabrina squealed with excitement, and Julie flashed a smile. "What time?" she asked. "How about 6? We can grab dinner and do something fun afterward. And could Toby hang out with Sabrina while we're out? That sounds perfect." And of course she replied, kissing my cheek before driving off. When I got inside, Toby was waiting eagerly by the door. "Well," she asked, "did you ask her out? Did you kiss her?" I hugged her and gave her a playful smack. "Yes, I did, and that's for me to know and for you to stop prying." She squealed in excitement, just like Sabrina had earlier. "I knew it. She's perfect for you, Dad. I love her, and Sabrina's like a sister to me," I shrugged. "Whatever happens, happens, Toby. You can't force it. Stop trying to play matchmaker." She snuggled into my chest. "I know, Dad, but if I didn't give you a nudge, you probably wouldn't have done anything. Not that I mind being the only girl in your life," I chuckled. "You'll always have a special place in my heart that no one can replace. You're my baby, and that's never going to change." She purred contentedly for a moment, then wandered off to do her own thing. Our first date went smoothly. I took her to play racquetball. Though new to the sport, she caught on quickly due to her tennis background. Once she understood the rules and bouncing the ball off the walls, she became quite impressive. Her natural athleticism gave her an advantage. She was fast and could change direction effortlessly thanks to her petite frame. After our game, we cooled off at a table outside the court, sipping drinks and relaxing. "Let's send a snap to the kids," she suggested, and we posed with our rackets and goggles for the picture. They replied right away, and it felt like we captured a great memory. Later, after we both showered, I took her out to dinner. We enjoyed delicious Italian food, and by the time we finished our wine, we were completely satisfied. Jules slid over to my side of the booth, and we leaned back, talking quietly and unwinding. It felt natural to put my arm around her, so I did. She nestled closer, flashing me a warm smile. I couldn't help thinking about how cute she was, and I realized it was a trait that would stay with her as she aged. When we got back to her house, she leaned in close, her eyes filled with anticipation. I sensed she wanted me to kiss her, so I did. Truthfully, I had wanted to kiss her even more than she had wanted it. It was a lingering, tender kiss, her lips soft and tasting like a mix of wine and cherry chapstick. As we pulled apart, I noticed movement behind the curtains. "Looks like we have an audience," I joked. She giggled, sounding just like Sabrina. "I'm not surprised. You know they're trying to set us up, right? Does that bother you?" I asked. She blushed. "No, I like everything I've learned about you, Ollie." "Same here," I said. "We should head inside before they peek through the curtains." For 4 months straight, we went out every Friday, and with each date we became closer. I wanted to take our relationship to the next level, but didn't want to rush her. Toward the end of our conversations, things started heating up, hinting at something deeper than friendship. I realized that I loved having her in my life, not just as a girlfriend but also as a close friend. We were constantly in touch, exchanging texts, snaps and calls throughout the day. Whenever I found something funny or interesting, Jules was the first person I thought of, and I couldn't wait to share it with her. As our connection deepened, we became more involved in each other's lives. We started a weekly tradition of having dinner together every Tuesday, which quickly became a beloved routine. We'd hang out, play games, and I found myself growing fond of Sabs, almost as much as her mother. They had many things in common, making it easy to understand one if you knew the other, even though they also had their differences. Both were equally charming, and those differences only highlighted the traits they shared. Life was generally good, though Rachel's constant presence remained a lingering annoyance. Since she was still involved with Toby, that meant she was also part of my life whether I liked it or not. Her presence always irritated me, especially whenever she came by to pick up Toby or I dropped her off at her grandparents' house. Rachel would often try to start a conversation, but I had no desire to engage with her. She was still living with her grandparents after losing her job at the clinic, along with Jerry, and was now working at another clinic across town. Whenever Rachel annoyed me too much, I would casually mention Jerry to shut her down. Once she asked, "How long until you forgive me?" I snapped back, "Forgive you for what? Last I checked, you don't think you did anything wrong. I've never heard you say I'm sorry, Oliver. I was wrong for trying to make Toby believe you were lying, for trying to take her away from you, and for cheating on me. Even then, she refused to accept responsibility for her actions. And I wasn't sure what forgiving her would even mean. I'd made peace with the situation and moved on. I hadn't forgotten, but I wasn't going to waste energy being bitter. People make mistakes. They have the right to leave, divorce, or end friendships. And you have to accept it and move forward. Bad things happen every day. In the heat of the moment, I had wanted to punish both cheaters, but I soon realized that their punishment was being themselves. They had to live with their choices, just as I planned to live with mine, by leaving the lies and betrayal behind and focusing on my own happiness. Rachel was clearly unhappy, and while I had no hard feelings toward Jerry, I wasn't going to seek revenge. Let karma or the universe take care of that. I was done with the game. She became even more miserable when she learned I was dating Jules. One night, when I dropped Toby off at her grandparents' house, Rachel approached me and said, "I heard you're dating the mother of one of Toby's friends." I just stared at her. "Is it true?" she pressed. "That's my business," I replied. "Like hell it is." She shot back. "I'm your spouse. I deserve to know." I laughed coldly. "You're not my spouse anymore. You found your true love, remember? We're divorced. What I do is none of your concern, and what you do isn't mine either. Stay out of my life." I stormed off, furious that she couldn't let it go. Toby was just as angry when I told her what happened, so after that, I stopped dropping her off or letting Rachel pick her up. Instead, her grandparents, Bob or Cindy, would come by our place to get her, which brought a lot of relief to my life. On the 7th-month anniversary of our trip to the lake, I took Jules out to a nice restaurant and then to a club. She rarely drank, maybe one beer or cocktail on occasion, but that night she had two. I raised an eyebrow, and she laughed. "Yep, I'm feeling wild tonight." I grinned and said, "You're perfect." Just like always, she tilted her head, a gesture she often made, and replied, "Do you really think so, Ollie? Because I think you're pretty perfect too. If I'm so perfect, why haven't you asked me to stay over?" I was caught off guard and must have looked surprised because she laughed again. "Have you even thought about it?" I quickly recovered, "Of course, Jules. I've thought about it a lot since the day I first saw you in that bikini on the boat. When we started dating, I knew you were different, special, and I didn't want to push you or make you uncomfortable." She smiled. "You won't scare me off." I told the girls not to wait up. "Really? Then why are we still here?" I joked. "Oh my goodness, Ollie, let's get out of here," she said, grabbing my hand as we left the club. "Do you want to spend the night with me?" I asked, barely containing my excitement. More than anything, she replied, leaning into me on the way home. Once we got to my place, I led her to the bedroom, and at the foot of the bed, I kissed her deeply. It was one of the most passionate kisses I'd ever experienced, and it felt like it lasted forever. When we finally broke apart to breathe, she gazed up at me with those warm brown eyes. "Make love to me, Oliver," she whispered. "I'm kind of nervous, don't be," I reassured her. "I love you, Julie Barnes, you know that?" "Right, I thought so," she murmured, but I needed to hear it. I love you too, Oliver. We spent the night together, and it was beautiful. Twice more during the night. We made love once when I initiated it, and once when she did. In the morning I woke up with her lying half on top of me, her hair draped over us, and her cheek resting on my shoulder. I watched her sleep, playing with her hair absent-mindedly, until she stirred and snuggled closer. I feel like I belong here, Ollie, she whispered. I know, I replied. Would you like to wake up here every morning? She opened her eyes and looked at me. You mean like move in? Well, yes, but also ... Will you marry me, Julie Barnes? She smiled and wiggled her fingers in front of my face. Something's missing. I quickly got out of bed, saying, hold that thought. She laughed. I will, but I can't hold something else. I really need to pee. While she dashed off to the bathroom, I went to my office to grab what I needed. When I returned, she was curled up under the covers. I took her hand, looked into her eyes and asked again, Julie, will you marry me? I slid the ring onto her finger. It was too big, but we could have it resized. She examined it closely. It's beautiful, she said. It looks old. Where did you get it? Remember when I mentioned going to that estate auction last month? I replied. I bought this ring there, intending to propose to you. It was made in England around 1810 for a duchess. Do you like it? I love it, she exclaimed. It's the most beautiful ring I've ever seen. Well, are you going to answer my question? I asked, grinning. Oh, yes, Oliver, yes, I'll marry you. I laughed and hugged her tightly. We need to tell the girls, she exclaimed.